So the first story is the story of a young woman who's now an order member, once associated with this centre. And she's at a difficult time in her life, rather lost, rather confused, sort of lacking direction, lacking confidence, just not really knowing what to do with herself. And one day she's in London and she wanders into the National Gallery. She likes art. She wanders into the National Gallery and she spends some time wandering around looking at paintings. And at a certain point, she comes to a painting which is it's actually a big painting of a historical scene. It's actually it's a painting of the execution of Lady Jane Grey. Yeah, some of you know the painting. So it shows a young woman dressed entirely in white with this red sort of bandage or red blindfold over her eyes. And she's sort of being led forward to the front of the painting where there's an axeman and an executioner's block. Yeah, she's just about to be executed. So she looks at this painting and that's not what she sees. She sees something else. Something else just sort of leaps out of the painting at her. And the way she described it when she told the story was she said, I realized my naivety had to die. Yeah. She saw this sort of white figure as a kind of symbol of a certain kind of naivety about her life. And she realized, well, in a way, it's almost like in that moment it died or it started to die. Yeah. She saw something about how she was living her life. She saw something that had to change. And she walked out of that art gallery a different person, in a way, a new person. It was the start of the rest of her life. Yeah, it was a real decisive turning point. So that's the first story. Second story, someone else connected to this Buddhist center who also became an order member. So at a certain time of their life, they had a serious heroin addiction. Very, very serious heroin habits, and were getting involved in crime in order to fund that habit. And it got to a certain point where he said, I just got to the absolute bottom, got as low as it's possible to get. I just could not go on. I was utterly, utterly sick of this. I just could not go on with it anymore, but I didn't know what to do. Felt totally sort of stuck and in this sort of terrible, terrible situation. And what he says happened next, and I believe him, I think this was his experience, was a figure of light appeared to him, and the figure said, you need to go and learn to meditate. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. So sometime later, I think it was a week or two later, he came here to the Croydon Buddhist Centre. The reason he knew where the Buddhist Centre was this was one of the places he used to break in and steal money to fund his habit. So he came here, he learned to meditate, and eventually, it wasn't easy. I think it was quite a struggle. Eventually, he stopped taking heroin. Eventually, he became a Buddhist. Eventually, he was even ordained and became an order member. Yeah. So over the years, I've heard lots of stories like this. Yeah. Different people, different situations, but quite a lot of stories like this where something completely unexpected and unbidden jumps into people's lives. Yeah. Seemingly from nowhere. Different people, different circumstances. Maybe someone close to them dies and it kind of creates a kind of shock, which something opens up. Remember one guy I knew, he said he was traveling as a young man, doing what, young people do, just traveling the world. He was in Thailand, he was walking down the street, not particularly thinking about anything spiritual. He turned a corner and he came across a statue of the Buddha sitting, meditating. Just looked at this and he burst into tears. And he realized this was saying something about what he needed to do with his life, what was missing in his life and what he really wanted in his life. Yeah. There's another story, don't we, about a young man, age 16, wandering into a second-hand bookshop in London and finding a copy of the Diamond Sutra. Some of you will know this story, and it completely changed his life. And he went on to found a Buddhist movement, and we're now sitting in the shrine room of one of the centers of those Buddhist centers. So yeah, these extraordinary experiences happen sometimes to some people. And I find these stories really, really fascinating. How something can kind of break into people's lives, completely unbidden, completely unexpected, seemingly from nowhere. Often, not always, but sometimes when they're at rock bottom, when they've just got to a place where they do not know what to do and they can't go anywhere else. It's like something breaks, something shatters, and that allows something new to come through. Yeah. And like, how do you explain those experiences? What's going on? Where is that coming from? Yeah. It's almost like, and this is speaking a bit metaphorically, I guess, it's almost like the truth, because it's the truth, because it's what is, it wants to be known. It's trying to find a way to make itself known. It's trying to find a way to sort of shine through. And it's just looking for a way or a form in which to do that. And so with that young woman, it took the form of a painting. Suddenly that painting became a kind of vehicle or a symbol by which something could become conscious, could become aware, could be known. Yeah. So where's it come from? Well, because the way our minds work is in terms of subject and object, inner and outer, we sort of tend to explain it in terms of, well, there was something that came from beyond. Yeah. Or maybe, perhaps this is a temperamental thing. We say, well, it was something that came from deep within. Yeah. And, in a way, because of the way our minds work, we can't help but interpret it like that. But yeah, according to Buddhism, it's not really like that. It's something a bit kind of deeper and more mysterious than that. Yeah. And there's a third little story I want to tell you. So this was told to me by someone I knew, a friend of mine who was in recovery, 12-step recovery, uh, about someone else who was in recovery at the same time as him. So this guy was recovering, I think, from an alcohol addiction, and he was doing quite well. And, as you probably know, the 12-step program, part of that is you have to realize your helplessness and sort of give up to a higher power. So he was trying to do this, even though he came from a very sort of hard, cynical, atheist kind of background. He was sort of, struggling and doing his best to sort of, open up to something. Yeah. And he had lots of friends, his old circle of friends who were also these very sort of hardened, cynical, atheistic people. And apparently he was talking to them one time about what was going on for him. And they rather cynically and, rather unhelpfully said, well, who is this God then that's helping you? Yeah. Who is this God then that's helping you? And what he said was, I don't know. All I know is it's not me. Yeah. I don't know. All I know is it's not me. Yeah. I think that was a very honest answer. He's saying, I don't know. And it was a very wise answer. All I know is it's not me. Yeah. I'm actually totally fed up with all the normal kind of ego stuff that's rattling around in myself, rattling around inside my head. It's such a relief to be able to open up to something bigger that isn't like that. Yeah. It's such a relief. It's such a help. Yeah. So in a way, that's what spiritual receptivity is. It's the not me, whatever that is. Yeah. It's open. It's that receptivity, that openness, that kind of orientation, that kind of sensitivity to whatever has the flavor of not me in that expansive, relieving, liberating sense. Yeah. So yeah, it's that spiritual receptivity that I'm going to be exploring in this talk and then linking to the theme of gratitude. So I've got sort of 4 issues around these stories and around spiritual receptivity that I want to explore. Yeah. So the first one is, but it's one thing to have a kind of big experience, one of those sort of breakthrough experiences. It's one thing to have a big experience. It's another thing to base your life around it. Yeah. So I've got another little story that illustrates this. Again, I tell this story, some of you all have heard me tell it before, but it's a story told to me by another order member, and he worked for a company called Windhorse Trading, which was at the time, a big Buddhist business that ran to raise funds to buy places like this, to fund Triratna activities. And it sold gifts, it imported and sold gifts, partly through its own chain of gift shops and partly through a wholesale business. So his job was to have a van full of these gifts, which he drove around the country visiting various gift shops, showing what was available and taking orders. Yeah. So he had his regular routes, his regular customers, and he got to know them quite well. Yeah. So one day he walks into one of these shops where there's a couple, a man and a woman, husband and wife, who run this shop. And it's just the woman there. The guy's not there. And she looks different. There's something different about her. And they get talking, and it turns out the husband has actually very suddenly, unexpectedly died. She's lost her husband. And obviously, this has very deeply affected her. And they get talking, and he says it's like talking to a Buddhist, or it's like talking to another order member. They're able to meet on a very sort of honest, deep, heartfelt, existential level and just talk very, very deeply about what's happened to her. And something in her has sort of opened up. She's really sort of thinking about, well, what does that mean? What is life? What can I really rely on? What does this mean for how I live my life? Yeah. So they have this sort of amazing conversation, and then he goes off. And then a couple of weeks later, he's back on his rounds and he's going back to that shop. And in a way, he's sort of looking forward to meeting her again. And in a way, looking forward to sort of carrying on that conversation. And in a way, if he can, helping her and just sort of being available in that way. So he walks into the shop in a way, sort of full of expectation. And he walks up to her, and he can tell straight away from her demeanor that that kind of conversation isn't going to happen again. She's just gone back into her old life. Yeah. And everything, what had opened up had just closed down again. Yeah. And at first, in a way, his first response was maybe a little bit egotistical. It was like, oh. But then, the deeper response came was he realized she just can't sustain that. Yeah. She hasn't got the supportive conditions that I have. A Dharma practice, a kind of perspective that Buddhism gives me, a sangha of people that are helping and supporting, and she hasn't got any of that. So how can she sort of stay open to all that? Yeah, it's very, very hard to sort of keep the mind and the heart open in that kind of way. And quite understandably, she's just gone back down into her ordinary life, and in a way, she'd just forgotten all about it. It was just gone. She'd just forgotten what had opened up for her. Yeah. William James, the psychologist, philosopher, wrote a classic book called The Varieties of Religious Experience. And one of the things he said in that book is that, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, a religious person is not someone who has a religious experience. It's someone who's able to make it the basis of their life. Yeah. A religious person is not someone who has a religious experience or a spiritual experience. It's someone who's able to make it the basis of their life or the center of their life, who's actually able to sort of say and follow through. What does this actually mean for how I live my life? Yeah. And that's a big deal. In a way, that's the difficult bit. Yeah. In that book, Varieties of Religious Experience, he talked to lots of people. And one of the things he found out is that religious experiences, they're very common. Loads of people have them at some stage in their life. Loads of people, even not people who don't think of themselves as religious, that they've had glimpses, they've had senses of something. In a way, it's quite common, yeah. But it's very rare for people to have the circumstances and the wherewithal and the conditions to then base their life around that. Yeah. They're not, there's a kind of readiness that's required. Yeah. You can have a kind of glimpse of something, you can have a deep experience, but then you need to bring it into your life. You need to integrate it into your life. Yeah. Sangharakshita, talking about the system of practice that we've been exploring in terms of gratitude, he was once giving very pithy definitions of the different stages or the different aspects of the system of practice. And he defined spiritual rebirth, one of the other aspects. He defined it as this. He said, it's trying to realize on the everyday level what you've glimpsed at the deepest level of your being. Trying to realize or trying to stay in contact with or trying to live out on the everyday level what you've glimpsed on the deepest level of your being. So that's what I'm talking about now. And that's a big part of practice. We can have a glimpse, but then we need to remember it and kind of work out what it means. Yeah. Otherwise, we just forget it. I think we do that quite often. We just forget because we don't have that sort of readiness. Yeah. So an image that Sangharakshita once used for explaining how practice works was the image of a lightning conductor. Yeah? It's quite a stark, scary image. And I think it's that for a good reason. Yeah. So the image or the metaphor is what our practice is kind of erecting a big lightning conductor, maybe going up to the top of a mountain or a hill and putting up this big lightning conductor so that the lightning of enlightenment, the lightning of that thing from beyond, as it were, is able to sort of strike it and we're able to be transformed. Yeah. So that's what our practice is doing. Yeah. And it's a good metaphor, a good image, and it works in a number of ways. So yes, it's a bit of a stark, scary image, but I think he was doing that deliberately because he's trying to say, like, spiritual transformation, it is a radical thing. It's not just sort of tinkering with something. It is, you are actually trying to kind of completely blow the fuse of your ego. Yeah, so it's an image of strong transformation. It's also a good image because it's showing that this thing, which is the not me, you can't predict it. You can't control it. Absolutely inherently, the nature of it is it's not me, and therefore it's not under your control, your willpower. Yeah. You can't predict where or when the lightning is going to strike. Yeah. But you can do something. You can kind of make of yourself something that it's more likely to strike. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So our practice, our ethics, our meditation, our Dharma study, and all the rest of it is making of ourselves something that it's more likely that the lightning will strike. Yeah. So it's like making a kind of receiver, an antennae that can kind of receive the signal, as it were. Yeah. And what we're doing with our practice is we're making something sort of, as it were, sturdy and strong that can then carry it and hold it and work with it and be transformed by it. Yeah. We're making of ourselves something that can then conduct that electricity and actually be transformed it. Yeah, kind of in a way recognize it, receive it, work with it, as it were. Yeah. So yeah, all our practice, being ethical, meditating, studying the Dharma, all of that, one way to see that is we're making a mind that is ready to receive the not me. Yeah. So through ethics, we practice kindness. Well, what that modifies our being. We become a little bit more open. We become a little bit kind of softer and less hard-edged. We become more sort of flexible in the way that we sort of see things and understand things, more open to other people, more open to different perspectives. Ethics changes us and makes us more kind of ready and receptive. The same with mindfulness. We practice mindfulness. It makes our minds more sort of clear and open and ready. The same with metta. The same with having clarity about the Dharma and what the Dharma is really saying. Yeah. So all these things we do, all these practices that we teach, one way of seeing them is that they're creating this kind of ready mind or ready heart, if you like. Yeah. Uh, in I'm not sure if it's Pali or Sanskrit, but it's called the Kalya Chitta. So chitta is heart, mind, and kalya is this quality of readiness, the Kalya Chitta. There's an order member called Kalya Chitta. Some of you may know her. Yeah. But yeah, that's what her name means. Yeah. Um, yeah. So sometimes spiritual receptivity, this stage or aspect of spiritual receptivity, is presented as something different to the other stages. It's a kind of different. It's a kind of receptivity rather than a doing of something. So there's a good reason why it's sometimes presented as being separate or different. But in another way, in the way that I'm talking about now, it's not different. Yeah. All our practice, all the things we're doing are about creating a ready mind, a ready heart. Yeah. All practice is making ourselves more receptive, more ready for the not me, as it were, making it more possible for it to break through and to happen, and more possible for us to be able to recognize it and embrace it and integrate it into our lives. Okay, so second little area that I wanted to discuss around this theme of receptivity is that sometimes something to look out for is, again, in a way, I'm talking about these big experiences. Sometimes we can get overexcited or over-identified or over-concerned with the big experiences. Yeah. We do see this happen from time to time. So someone's talking about what's happening in their meditation, and maybe other people start comparing themselves with that and either get a little bit inflated or get a little bit dejected. Oh, I can't meditate, I'm useless. So we do this sort of unhelpful comparison. Yeah. Or we get, somebody's talking and we get a little bit overexcited and over intoxicated. Oh, wow, that's so amazing. It's incredible. What, we sort of see this thing as the kind of real deal in a way which isn't quite helpful. Yeah. Or, something that I've seen happen, not very often, but I remember once a while ago this happening. Somebody had a very profound experience, which really sort of shook them up. But they happened to be someone who was a bit all over the place and not very together. So when they told their friends about it, their friends didn't quite believe them. It was like, that couldn't have happened to him. His practice is all over the place. Yeah. Really, a real shame, real sad. And they weren't able to just sort of fully respond to what had happened to him because there was this sort of skepticism about whether such a thing was really possible for such a person. Yeah. And I think all these things that I'm talking about, they're all based on a kind of misconstrual of the nature of these big experiences. Yeah. So a way to talk about this that I find helpful is this sort of image or metaphor of an aeroplane wing. Yeah. So this is an aeroplane wing in cross section. Yeah. Flying through the sky. And it has a leading edge, that's the front, that's the leading edge, and it has a trailing edge. Yeah. And so the leading edge, in terms of the image or the metaphor, that's our sort of deepest experiences. That's the kind of deepest glimpse, the furthest forward we've been, as it were. And then the trailing edge is the bits of us that are really far behind and haven't caught up with us yet. The bits of us that still do unskillful things, are still all over the place, still completely forget about the Dharma life and so on. And in between, there's a whole load of other stuff. Yeah. So that's what we're like. We're all like that. We've all got a leading edge and a trailing edge, as it were. Yeah. That's just quite naturally how we are. Yeah. But the shape of people's wing, as it were, varies. People are different kind of temperaments, yeah. So you might get somebody, person A, the blue one, who's got, their leading edge is quite far ahead, but their trailing edge is also quite far behind. Yeah? Their psyche, their being is more sort of spread out, as it were, yeah. And then you might have other people they're just more of a sort of steady in a way might seem rather ordinary temperament. And yeah, there's a kind of leading edge, and the trailing edge is not so far behind. They're just more kind of compact and sort of running along in a different kind of way. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So in a way, you'll just be a particular kind of shape. And in a way, that's the shape you are. And perhaps you don't need to worry too much about that, but just know what kind of shape you are and what the implications of that is for your practice. Yeah. But sometimes it's like people want to know who's the most advanced. Yeah. Who's the most spiritually advanced? Yeah. And I think you can see from this that it's actually a pointless question. Yeah. Because you could say, well, who's the most advanced? Well, whose leading edge is at the front? Yeah. And in this case, it's the blue person, person A. Their leading edge is a little bit ahead of the other person. So you could look at it that way. Or you could say, well, actually, what we need to look at is the average, the kind of median, yeah, of where someone's at, in which case person B is the most advanced. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. It's a sort of meaningless question or a pointless question. All that matters really is the direction of travel. All that matters is that those people are moving forwards and that we're all in our own way, according to our own temperament, doing what we can to move forward the leading edge, to sort of deepen our vision, to deepen our kind of glimpses of reality, if you like. And we're also all the time working to integrate the whole of ourselves behind that, to bring the kind of thing together, to bring if we just do this, our practice won't work. If we just do that, our practice will sort of come to a stop and lose momentum. It's both together. Yeah. In a way, you could even see that as spiritual death, and that's spiritual rebirth. And the both of them they're actually part of the same thing. They work together. And it's the direction of travel that counts. Yeah. It's the movement that matters. Yeah. All right. So issue number 3 that I want to explore a little bit is in a way, this has been, I think, a theme all the way through these talks. It's the theme of how what Shinran called the calculating mind can get in the way. Yeah. So I think part of what we've been exploring is the dilemma of how does the ego get beyond the ego? Yeah. My consciousness is sort of structured in a certain kind of way in which I'm constantly dividing things up into me in here and the world out there. And that sort of structuring, just means there's certain kind of filters operating all the time, and certain ways of interpreting that are just very, very instinctual. Yeah. So how do you get beyond that? How do you sort of jump out of that, as it were? Especially as a lot of the time when you're in it, you don't even know you're in it. It's just, as Jung said, you can't see the lion that's eaten you. Yeah. It's something that you're in and you can't even see that you're in it. Yeah. So how does the ego get beyond the ego? And then the kind of additional problem of, well, anything we do, it's so easy for it then to become just appropriated by the ego. It becomes another ego project. We start being pleased with ourselves when our meditation's going well and so on and so forth. Yeah. I'm sure you know the kind of problem. Yeah. So in a way, all forms of Buddhism, all the different Buddhist traditions and schools, and actually probably all spiritual traditions, they kind of grapple with this dilemma, with this paradox in different ways. And yeah, a little theme in this series is we've been looking particularly at Shinran, the Japanese Buddhist teacher Shinran, and the particularly kind of radical and uncompromising way that he grappled with this problem. He just really felt it was so, he'd been practicing for a long time, for decades, and he felt his practice was still it was still transactional. He was still doing something so that he could kind of earn or deserve to get something. Yeah, there's still this sort of sense of transaction or of earning something or attaining something or getting something or deserving something. And he realized that was still what he called the calculating mind at work. And he was completely fed up with his calculating mind. Yeah. He wanted to get beyond it. Yeah. So yeah, in a way, spiritual receptivity is one of the ways we're getting beyond the calculating mind. So a couple of things Sangharakshita said about spiritual receptivity and, yeah, in a way, getting beyond this calculating mind. So when he taught the system of practice, that was a way that he's articulated that, or given an overview of the spiritual life. When he taught this, and when he was talking about spiritual receptivity, he taught the just sitting practice as, in a way, the sort of main or key spiritual receptivity meditation practice that we do in our, yeah. So he explained the importance of just sitting, that you do all the other practices, the mindfulness of breathing, the metta, and all the other practices where you are in a way trying to cultivate something. You are in a way putting in effort, trying to get somewhere. You are in a way directing your mind in a particular direction. And that's necessary and good and helpful. And then he said, but sometimes you just need to stop doing all that and just sit and just allow whatever wants to unfold and be receptive to what's kind of good and expansive and liberating in that. Yeah. So this was the just sitting practice. And yeah, sometimes he recommended a kind of rhythm of do the metta bhavana, just sit, do the mindfulness of breathing, just sit, particularly on retreat, this sort of rhythm of doing and not doing, as it were. And so people asked him, well, how do you just sit? And he said, well, you just sit. Yeah. And it was like, I've read this in seminars that have been transcribed, yeah, but what do you do? Yeah. Basically it's very hard for us to get out of this mindset of having to do something in order to achieve something. Yeah. Of wanting to make something happen. Yeah. And again, of course, that has its place. But the whole point of just sitting is you're not doing that. You're letting go of all that. You're kind of relaxing all that. You're just opening your mind. Yeah. You're not even waiting. Yeah. Even waiting has a certain kind of, when's it coming? When's the bus going to turn up? It's, yeah. So no expectations even. Yeah. No expectations. Possibility, but no expectation. Yeah. You just sit. Yeah. And in a way, that's hard for us to do. He also, just share another comment he made. He was commenting once about what's in Buddhist tradition is called self-power, which is the idea, yeah, that I make effort, I practice, and I traverse a path to enlightenment, and other power, which is actually I just open myself to the influence of the Buddhas. I pray to be born in the pure land of the Buddhas, and they will enlighten me, as it were. Yeah. So self-power and other power. And traditionally, sometimes self-power is seen as the difficult path. Yeah. To do it yourself is the difficult path. And to open up to the influence of the Buddhas, that's, letting the Buddhas do it for you. That's the easy path. So sometimes in Buddhist tradition, that's how these two paths are articulated. Sangharakshita was commenting on this and he turned it round in a very, very interesting way. There's truth in both ways, but it was very interesting what he said. He said, actually, the path of self-power is the easy path. Yeah. And the reason for that is it goes along, it kind of keeps intact our sense of I'm in control. I'm doing this. Yeah. It goes along with our sort of, particularly our Western individualistic mindset of doing something in order to get something. Yeah. We're used to the idea of doing something, making an effort to sort of achieve something. And this way of practicing sort of retains that intact, as it were. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Whereas the idea of other power, he said, well, that's actually the difficult practice. Just to sort of give that up, to let go of all that, really goes against our natural human tendency. Yeah. Just to kind of give up our agency, to give up our control, to give up our autonomy in a certain kind of way, that's more risky. That's more unknown. It goes beyond the whole business of kind of bargaining, of getting something, of a kind of reciprocal kind of bargain, of earning something in that kind of way. Yeah. So yeah, a couple of kind of interesting comments from Sangharakshita on this issue of the calculating mind. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute and link that to this whole topic of gratitude. Last sort of point about spiritual receptivity, last sort of general point. So yeah, I told these stories about these big experiences. But of course, that's not what happens most of the time. Those are kind of perhaps happen once or twice in your life, if ever. Some people, I think, temperamentally, they're not even like that at all. Yeah. It's not our experience most of the time. Yeah. People are temperamentally different. Some people are more kind of dramatic. Some people are just sort of quieter and simpler in the way that their psyche works and unfolds. Yeah. But whoever we are, big experiences definitely isn't how it is for us most of the time. It's definitely for most people, most of the time, that's not how it is. Yeah. So, what does spiritual receptivity mean in everyday terms? Yeah. So I guess it means, or putting the question another way, what does it mean to notice the not me in everyday terms? It's this noticing of the not me, or at least noticing a kind of softening or loosening or expanding or opening up of the me into something else. How can we notice that and respond to that in everyday terms? So I think it's just simple things like noticing, well, I've been doing the metta bhavana every day for the last 3 weeks, and I can see, if I'm honest with myself, it's made a real difference. Yeah. I'm just a bit more confident and more at ease in myself. I'm able to sort of keep the initiative in my life a bit more. I'm more able to be aware of others. It's just sort of noticing things like that. Yeah. And then acting accordingly. Oh, right. I can see this making a real difference. I need to carry on doing this. Yeah. That would be an example of spiritual receptivity in everyday life. Just that sensitivity to the not me and a kind of following through on that. Yeah. So, in other words, these dramatic stories are, in a way, they're good stories because they can be inspiring and they can sort of say something about is what's possible. And the lightning conductor image, it's a good image. Yeah, it does really convey certain things about how the spiritual life works in a helpful way. But it's sort of not the whole story. Yeah. In a way, we need more than one metaphor. All metaphors have their sort of limits, and we need different metaphors. Yeah. So, yeah, I just want to leave this part of the talk with a different metaphor, which is the metaphor of a radio telescope, one of those big radio telescopes, those big dishes that they point up into the sky to be able to see what's on the other side of the universe, as it were. Yeah. So we can see our practice as we're making ourselves into this radio telescope. Yeah. We're making our heart and our mind wide open and receptive, but not receptive to any old thing. We're then pointing and orientating that radio telescope to the sky, to the deep sky and to the stars. Yeah, there's an orientation, a pointing. Yeah. And then if we do that, if we kind of make ourselves like that, the kind of ready mind heart, as it were, we're able to pick up, detect, receive these signals from deep space, from the stars, as it were. We're able to sort of receive and be transformed by something else, by by the not me, as it were. Yeah. So yeah, spiritual receptivity, and in a way, all practice is making ourselves into this sort of ready mind, heart, this wide open being, pointing itself, orientating itself to the stars up in the sky. Okay, so I want to finish by linking all that to gratitude. So I'm aware I've said quite a lot about spiritual receptivity and I haven't said anything about gratitude. So I just want to finish by exploring spiritual receptivity in a way as a form of gratitude. So spiritual receptivity as gratitude, or gratitude as spiritual receptivity. Yeah. So yeah, this awareness, this attentiveness to the not me. In putting that in another way, it's a sort of awareness of how of what we rely on. Yeah. Or it's an awareness and attentiveness to something, or a wonder or a gratitude to something that we receive, to something that is sort of possible if we receive, if we're open, if we're ready. Yeah. So yeah, to come back to Shinran, it's the whole business of seeing practice as a gift, seeing awakening and enlightenment as something that's given, not as something that we're earning or attaining or deserving, but something that we receive as a gift. Yeah. So in the kind of myth and teaching of Shinran, he saw it as a gift from the Buddha Amitabha. The Buddha Amitabha, through his great compassion, was creating something which we were able to receive as a gift. Yeah. So awakening as gift. Yeah. And yeah, this gratitude inherently takes us beyond self, takes us beyond grasping, that kind of grasping, calculating mind. It's incompatible with the kind of calculating mind. So the forms this might take is, well, gratitude to the Buddha. Yeah, we can all practice gratitude to the Buddha and to other spiritual teachers. Yeah. Yeah, we've explored this idea of we're actually living in the field of merit of the Buddha. Yeah. There's this idea of transferring merits. Sometimes we recite the verses of transferring merits. May the merit from our practice benefit others. Yeah. And that's not just an idea, that's actually happening. Yeah. Right now, here, this morning, we are sitting in the field of the merit of the Buddha. The Buddha discovered something 2,500 years ago. He taught, he set something in motion. And now, through some extraordinary miracle, it's on Croydon High Street. Yeah. And we are practicing and talking about and exploring what it was that he was pointing us to. That's incredible, isn't it? We are actually right now actually living in the field of merit of the Buddha. The Buddhist merit it's there right now. Yeah. So we can just remember that and try and feel that. Yeah. We can think of the Buddha with gratitude. And if we do that, the Buddha will be here. The Buddha will be alive. The Buddha will be a reality for us. Yeah. And again, this is what Sangharakshita meant by trying to realize on the everyday level what you've glimpsed on the deepest level of your being. Yeah. If we just think of the Buddha in that way, it brings the Buddha into our lives. The Buddha isn't just a distant figure. He's here now in a certain kind of way. Yeah. So how do we do that? Well, we can chant with gratitude, as Gambhira Lila was demonstrating just before we came in here. This is what puja is partly about, ritual, shrines, making beautiful shrines and offerings. Again, it's an expression, or can be partly an expression of gratitude to the Buddha. We offer things, we offer gifts to the Buddha as an honored guest. Yeah, that we're doing that. You know, it's all got a kind of big reason behind why we do those things. Yeah, and then just imagining the Buddha, retelling the stories of the Buddha with gratitude, just recalling and remembering the stories of the Buddha and the teachers and how the Dharma has come to us. And reading the texts with gratitude. Yeah. So very, very often, if you read a traditional teaching, say you read a teaching by some Tibetan teacher, the first few verses, they're all about gratitude. It just starts off by saying, praise and homage to the Buddha, praise and homage to the gurus who taught this, and I know nothing, I'm just passing on what I've learned from others. It starts with gratitude. It starts with this ready mind, with the Kalya Chitta. Yeah. So we can practice that. When we read a text, we can start off by remembering this is the Buddha talking to me, trying to share something with me, trying to communicate to me and others. That's why the Buddha said this. Yeah. We can try and get ourselves into that frame of mind. Yeah. And of course, that will mean we'll read it in a very different kind of way. So gratitude to the Buddha, and then there's gratitude to the Dharma. Yeah. Gratitude that it works, that practice works. Gratitude that there are practices like the Metta Bhavana. Gratitude that there's a path, a way that we can learn to change and develop ourselves and grow. Yeah. Even gratitude that there's just awareness, that even when I'm struggling to meditate, at least I can sit there and just sort of notice what's going on and be aware of our minds. I mean, how amazing, how wondrous that we have this gift of awareness. So practicing gratitude to the Dharma, yeah? Recalling the best times, the deepest times of our practice with gratitude. Recalling our good fortune to have somehow found the Dharma on Croydon High Street, yeah? Noticing those little changes, noticing those little hints of the not me, and having a sense of gratitude, seeing that as a gift, yeah? And even just gratitude that we can sit there and be aware of our minds, yeah? And then gratitude to the Sangha, yeah? Rejoicing in the merits of others, and gratitude for the support and inspiration that we're able to give each other, yeah? Gratitude for seeing other people change and grow and develop, yeah? And again, yeah, just remembering and recalling how amazing that the Dharma is here. And it's here because of the generosity and hard work of previous generations. This place is a gift. So many people worked so hard and sometimes went through very difficult things to create this place. And we're now benefiting from that. Yeah. And it's just so good to anyway, often remember that, recall that, know that, and let our heart and our mind be sort of flavored by that. Yeah. So yes, spiritual receptivity as gratitude as spiritual receptivity. And if we can practice that, it will help with all those 4 issues that I was talking about earlier. It will help avoid being over-identified or over-intoxicated with big experiences. It will take us out of the calculating mind into something else. It will actually help us base our whole life around those deepest glimpses and experiences. Yeah, it will help integrate those into the everyday, into the whole life. Yeah, it will bring all of that together. It will help us to see the not me operating all the time, every day, in various ways. Okay, so I'm just going to say one more thing to finish. So we started with the Buddha, the first talk. I told the story of the Buddha just after his enlightenment, bowing to the tree. I find that image so beautiful and inspiring, bowing to the tree under which he gained enlightenment. Yeah. So he naturally felt a sense of gratitude. This tree had sheltered him, in a way, looked after him, sheltered him from the hot sun, sheltered him from the rain, in a way, been quite a companion in a sort of way. They'd been there together for many, many weeks, perhaps. So he just naturally feels grateful. And as he's about to leave and set off for the next phase of his life, he bows in gratitude to the tree. So I want to end with the Buddha as well, and end with another little story, another image of the Buddha's gratitude. And it's from the same time. It's from, again, quite shortly after the Buddha gained enlightenment. And it's in a little story called a sutta called the Garava Sutta, which some of you will know. Yeah. So the Buddha, the freshly enlightened Buddha is reflecting. He's sort of reflecting and sort of assimilating what has happened and the significance of it. And he reflects that it's unhappy to live without reverence. Yeah. He, even the Buddha, wants something or someone to revere, to look up to. Yeah. He says it's unhappy to live without reverence. Yeah. But he realizes with his enlightened mind, he realizes there isn't anyone who can teach him about ethics, who can teach him about meditation, who can teach him about wisdom, because he's gained awakening and no one else has done that yet. So there isn't anyone that he could be a disciple to or could look up to or revere in that kind of way. So he asks, well, so who can I revere? What can I revere? Yeah. So this is an incredible incident, very, very, worth a lot of reflection. Again, it's something that Sankaraj has sort of drawn our attention to and really sort of brought out in his teaching. Even the Buddha wants something to look to serve. Yeah. The Buddha doesn't want him to be at the center. It's not about him. It's about something else. Yeah. And what he decides is he says, I shall look up to and obey the Dharma. I will be a disciple of the Dharma, revering and obeying it. Yeah. So he means the Dharma, not in the sense of the Buddhist teachings, because they didn't exist at that point, because he hasn't taught yet. He means the Dharma as in the possibility of awakening, the possibility inherent in the universe of growth and awakening. Yeah. He's going to look up and revere that. Yeah. So, in other words, we can't really live without reverence. Life without reverence is no life at all, really. We need something or someone to look to orientate to serve in a way. Or putting that another way, we can't really live without gratitude. A life without gratitude is no life at all, really. We need a sense that there's something bigger, better, a sense of the not me, a sense of something that could be given to us, a gift given, yeah? So that gratitude to what's higher and bigger than us, what's beyond us, that gratitude to the not me, in a way is reverence. That's what reverence is. It's this sort of gratitude, this opening to what's beyond, yeah? So the Buddha was grateful to the ordinary things that supported him, the tree. He was grateful to his previous teachers. He was grateful to the first person who brought him food when he started eating again and so on. He was grateful to those things, but he was also profoundly grateful that there was a path, there was an awakening, there was a way, there was a whole, path to nirvana, as it were. So yeah, just going to leave you with the Buddha. He now knows that he's part of a universe that has enlightenment as integral to it. He knows that that enlightenment is now shining through him, and he feels profoundly grateful. Thank you.